television. If you look in a study they did in a survey, that the average worker, like service worker in this country, watches 30 hours of television a week. Children, they say 40 to 60 hours of television a week, a full-time job, watching nonsense. This is what they're doing. When you go to the managers of these people, they watch 20 hours a week. When you go to the heads of the people over the managers, the overseers, then you get like 10 hours a week. When you get to the CEOs, they watch 2 to 3 hours of television a week. 50% of that material is material related to the work that they're doing. So the movers and shakers in this world are not sitting around watching television. They're utilizing their lives for shar, for evil. And they're spreading their fasad all over the world, but they're busy at it. And the Muslims are asleep, and because we have gone to sleep, they have taken over. Because we have gone to sleep, they have taken over. And that's why we find ourselves in the horrific condition we find ourselves in. And until the Muslims wake up, it's just going to, one nightmare to another. We're just going to be in one nightmare to another. That's all it is. They're just nightmares because we're asleep. And when we wake up, then we can enter into the light of day. And Islam is a deen about waking up. That's what it is. Religion is supposed to wake people up. Islam is not an opiate. There are other religions that fulfill that function. In fact, they got rid of religion and now they just spread opium, quite literally. The same people that used to control the state, that controlled religion to maintain the masses, to do what they want them to do, when they got rid of religion, when they found it was no longer useful, now they literally spread drugs. You can see this. The CIA in this country is directly involved and engaged in drug dealing, bringing in cocaine, putting it into the inner cities in this country. In Liverpool, in England, in Liverpool, this is not a joke, I'm not making this stuff up. You can go buy this in mainstream bookstores and read this stuff of people within these organizations that admit this. They'll even admit this on 60 Minutes. I mean, this is not a joke, this is reality, people. There are people that want to keep you asleep. If they don't use the drugs of white powder, they'll use the drug of television, they'll use the drug of their mass media, they'll use all these drugs, but they're going to keep you asleep because they fear the day that you wake up. That's what they fear. And you should be very well aware of that. Don't just sit around and until the next game's on, and they'll just keep giving it to you. They'll give it to you, they'll give you football, and then they'll give you baseball, and then they'll give you basketball, and then they'll give you football again, and then they'll give you baseball, and then they'll give you basketball. They'll keep churning out the songs for you, one after another. They'll bring the new pop stars, they'll bring the new actresses with the beautiful faces, they'll bring the new designs, the latest fashion, the latest fad. They'll just keep doing it for you. They'll keep churning it out as long as you keep eating it up and buying it. The day that you turn it off is the day that you have overcome them. That is the day that we have had victory. The day that we say we turn it off, we turn all this rubbish off, that's the day that we have victory. But until that day comes, we're just going to go from one nightmare to another. As an ummah, we need to rise up to the level of this deen. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم السلام عليكم.
The question here is, a lot of experts in AI don't share the same level of concern that you do about the dangers of AI.
Fools.
What
Famous last words.
What specifically do you believe that they don't?
Well, maybe we're in a simulation right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Sometimes it feels like that.
Okay, now this guy who was at Cal Poly Tech, right? This guy, Jack Parsons, was openly a devil worshiper. He developed the fuel that enabled us to penetrate the stratosphere. Satellites could not have come about without this guy. In his diary that he himself wrote, he had a dream. This is 1948. He had a dream where he saw somebody that he calls Belial Dajjal. And he tells him, "You are helping me." Okay, I'm not making this up. You think I'm making this up? Wallahi, I'm not making this up. You go look it up yourself. Okay, so where's all this stuff coming from? Seriously, where's it all coming from? We're in the age of the Dajjal, It's just Allahu Alam, when and where and what, but this is it, people. As far as I'm concerned, it's end game. Huh? That's why Allahu Akbar, water and prayer and Qibla, can't take that away from us. Some of these women are in sexual slavery. We know that in sexual slavery there have been pornographic materials found in these busts of people that are sex trafficking. And this again is the optimization of profit. It's a lot cheaper to use a sexual slave in the production of pornographic films. So we have to look at immoral capitalism. So one of the temporary delusions that we have today is that the Muslims in America are a threat to the security of the United States of America as a community. One of the delusions in the United States today is that somehow Sharia law is a threat to the United States of America. We have states that are passing anti-Sharia laws. They don't even know what the Sharia is, and they're passing anti-Sharia laws in legislation. $42 million has been spent, according to a study, on the Islamophobic literature and the films and all of these things that have been produced. $42 million. And this is what officially that we know about. There's a lot of money that we don't know about. So when we think of the United States, we have to think of ourselves as part of a story. The Muslims are part of a narrative, and we have been part of this narrative from the beginning. The Muslims were here from the very start. There's evidence that we were probably here before Columbus, and that's a debatable point. But we know that the Muslims have been here for over 500 years. There's ample historical evidence to prove that. We have cities in the United States that were named by Muslims. There are several cities in the United States that were named Medina. We have a city in Indiana that's called Muhammad, the city of Muhammad, Illinois. We have a city in Indiana called Medina, and these are Turkish and Arabs that came to that city and founded that city and named it after Medina. We have a city that was first named Mecca, and then they changed it to Medina. So the Muslims have been here, and they have been part of this. If you look at the dome above the Library of Congress in the main hall, you will see Islam. All of the other names are names of civilizations, but Islam was singled out because of its contribution to human knowledge. And this is really important for us to remember. So we have been part of this story.
By the way, just on a factual point, since we heard a lot about the second speaker, about how backward we Muslims all are, on a factual point, you said that Islam was born in Saudi Arabia. Islam was born in 610 AD. Saudi Arabia was born in 1932 AD. So you were only 1,322 years off. Not bad? Not bad start there. Talking of maths, by the way, a man named Al-Khwarizmi was one of the greatest mathematicians of all time, a Muslim, worked in the golden age of Islam. He's the guy who came up with not just algebra, but algorithms. Without algorithms, you wouldn't have laptops. Without laptops, Daniel Johnson tonight wouldn't have been able to print out his speech in which he came to berate us Muslims for holding back the advance and intellectual achievements of the West, which all happened without any contribution from anyone else other than the Judeo-Christian people of Europe. In fact, Daniel David Levering, the author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and author of The Golden Crucible, points out that there would be no Renaissance, there would be no Reformation in Europe without the role played by Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd and some of the great Muslim theologians, philosophers, scientists in bringing Greek texts to Europe. As for this being our university, I will leave that to the imagination as to who is our and who is there. I studied here too. To address the gentleman's very valid point here, I'm not going to play that game. I don't actually believe that Christianity is a religion of violence and hate because of what the LRA does in Uganda or what Crusaders did to Jews and Muslims in Jerusalem when they took back the city in the 12th or 13th or whatever century it was. I believe that Christianity, like Islam, like pretty much every mainstream religion, is based on love and compassion and faith. I do follow a religion in which 113 out of the 114 chapters of the Qur'an begins by introducing the God of Islam as a God of mercy and compassion. I would not have it any other way. I don't follow a religion which introduces my God to me as a God of war, as some kind of Greek God of wrath, as a God of hate, and injustice. Not at all. As Adam pointed out, you go through the Qur'an and you see the mercy and the love and the justice. And yes, you have verses that refer to warfare and violence. Of course it does. This is not a motion about pacifism. I'm not here to argue that Islam is a pacifistic faith. It is not. Islam allows military action, violence in certain limited contexts. And yes, a minority of Muslims do take it out of that context. But is it religious? We talked about Woolwich. Daniel and Anne-Marie have suggested that it's definitely religion that's behind all of this. Listen to Professor Robert Pape of the University of Chicago, one of America's leading terrorism experts, who, unlike our esteemed opposition tonight, studied every single case of suicide terrorism between 1980 and 2005, 315 cases in total. And he concluded, and I quote, "There is little connection between suicide terrorism and Islamic fundamentalism or any of the world's religions. Rather, what nearly all suicide terrorist attacks have in common is a specific secular and strategic goal to compel modern democracies to withdraw military forces from territory that the terrorists consider to be their homeland." And the irony is, when we talk about terrorism, the irony is that the opposition and the Muslim terrorists, the Al-Qaeda types, actually have one thing in common. Because they both believe that Islam is a warlike, violent religion. They both agree on that. They have everything in common. Osama bin Laden would be nodding along to everything he's heard tonight from the opposition side. He agrees with them. The problem is that mainstream Muslims don't. The majority of Muslims around the world don't. In fact, a gentleman here started quoting all sorts of polls. Gallup carried out the biggest poll of Muslims around the world, of 50,000 Muslims in 35 countries. 93% of Muslims rejected 9/11 and suicide attacks. And of the 7% who didn't, they all, when polled and focus grouped, cited political reasons for their support for violence, not religious reasons. And as for Islamic scholars and what they say, well, Daniel talks about our University of Oxford. We'll go down to Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies, get hold of a man named Sheikh Afifi al-Akiti, who is a massively well-credentialed and well-respected Islamic scholar, who has studied across the world, who in the days after 7/7 published a fatwa denouncing terrorism in the name of Islam, calling for the protection of all non-combatants at all times, and describing suicide bombings as an innovation with no basis in Islamic law. Go and listen to Sheikh Tahir al-Qadri, one of Pakistan's most famous Islamic scholars, who published a 600-page fatwa condemning the killing of all innocents and all suicide bombings unconditionally without any ifs or buts. There's nothing new here. This is mainstream Islam, mainstream scholarship, which has said this for years. You don't go out and kill people willy-nilly in the high street or anywhere else, on a bus or a mall, based on verses of the Qur'an that you cherry-pick without any context, any understanding, any interpretation, or any commentary.
Point of information.
Please.
Well,
It
doesn't happen apparently.
I didn't say it doesn't happen at all. I never said it didn't happen. I don't blame Islam. Yes, it's a very good point. And a lot of us are campaigning against that. And we're campaigning against it in the name of Islam. We're campaigning against it in the name of various interpretations of Islam. Anne-Marie comes and scares us with her talk of Sharia law. I would like to see the book of Sharia law. It doesn't exist. People argue over what Sharia law is. And you empower the extremists by saying there is only one version. You empower them all. I don't believe you took any interruptions, Anne-Marie, so I think you should stay there for a moment.
Several countries.
Here's what we're dealing with. Here's what we're dealing with. I took your point. Here we are dealing with a 1,400-year-old global religion, followed by 1.6 billion people in every corner of the world, a quarter of humanity, of all backgrounds, cultures, ethnicities. And yet the opposition tonight wants to generalize, stereotype, smear, in order to desperately win this debate.
A lot of the people involved in mass control are actually heavily involved in this science. And that's what you find out when you do the research. Many of the people that are involved in film, many of the people involved in music, many of the people that are involved in newscasting, they know how to manipulate the minds of people. And whether it's done with this type of magic or simply with the power of technology and the higher magic, the result is the same. You get people that are as if they're possessed. And this is why it would be indistinguishable. You know, we've got kids that are stabbing children. We've got people that are just shooting people and not knowing why they're doing these things. And this is coming out of a culture that is really, really profoundly disturbed in its essence, because no civilization that was healthy would produce the type of games that they're exposing these young children to. No civilization that was healthy would produce the type of films, where they have films where the main character tortures people and chops off their fingers and their hands, or slowly tortures them to death. Muslims would have never come up with these type of ideas, because their culture is not a demonic, dark culture. It's become demonic and dark because of a lot of madness that's happened in the Muslim world. I mean, there's a lot of demonic, dark things going on, and these people are really. Dostoevsky called his book about the terrorists the possessed, and in one translation it's called the demons. I don't know the Russian word for it, but he certainly understood that there was something demonic involved in this. So that's, it's difficult for people to deal with this stuff, but when you actually find out about the characters that were involved in producing a lot of this technology, and you read the history of it, you find that they were really involved in a lot of these things, which is very strange. And when you see the result that these things have on people and the effect that they have on them. So, I mean, I don't know, Arthur C. Clarke, who said that advanced technology becomes indistinguishable from magic, was involved in magic. He was involved in numerology. I certainly wasn't raised with the idea, like magic was something, I thought magic was pulling rabbits out of hats and things like that. When I became Muslim and I heard all these things, and I didn't really, whatever, it wasn't really something. But in the last few years, it's become much clearer to me how much this is actually a force working in the world. And it makes much more sense to me now why there are so many hadiths and so many protective du'as against this stuff. This is evil. And also, the influences of the demons. The Prophet said, or that they should become present. So the demonic realm is real. And there are people, unfortunately, that are actively involved in attempting to bring that realm into this realm. And this is where it gets very strange.
It's not necessarily bad, it's just outside of human control. Now, the thing that's going to be tricky here is that it's going to be very tempting to use AI as a weapon. It's going to be very tempting. In fact, it will be used as a weapon. So the on-ramp to serious AI, the danger is going to be more humans using it against each other, I think, most likely. That'll be the danger. Yeah. Company is essentially a cybernetic collective of people and machines. That's what a company is. And then there's different levels of complexity in the way these companies are formed. And then there's this sort of like a collective AI in the Google search, where we're all sort of plugged in as like nodes on the network, like leaves on a big tree. And we're all feeding this network with our questions and answers. We're all collectively programming the AI, and and Google plus all the humans that connect to it are one giant cybernetic collective. This is also true of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these social networks. They're giant cybernetic collectives. It feels like we are the biological bootloader for AI, effectively. We are building it. And then we're building progressively greater intelligence. And the percentage of intelligence that is not human is increasing. And eventually, we will represent a very small percentage of intelligence. But the AI is informed strangely, by the human limbic system. It is, in large part, our id writ large. Well, you mentioned all those things, the sort of primal drives. There's all the things that we like and hate and fear. They're all there on the internet. They're a projection of our limbic system. How much limbic resonance they're able to achieve with people. The more limbic resonance, the more engagement. I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. This was futile. I tried for years. People call it the singularity, and that's probably a good way to think about it. It's a singularity. It's hard to predict, like a black hole, what happens past the event horizon. But one thing is for sure, we will not control it. From a long-term existential standpoint, that's like the purpose of Neuralink, is to create a high bandwidth interface to the brain such that we can be symbiotic with AI. Because we have a bandwidth problem. You just can't communicate through your fingers. It's too slow. You don't even, well, most people don't realize they are already a cyborg. That phone is an extension of yourself. It's just that the data rate, the rate at which, or the communication rate between you and the cybernetic extension of yourself that is your phone and computer is slow. It's very slow. And that it's like a tiny straw of information flow between your biological self and your digital self. And we need to make that tiny straw like a giant river, a huge, high bandwidth interface. It's an interface problem, data rate problem. If you solve the data rate problem, then I think we can hang on to human-machine symbiosis through the long term. And then people may decide that they want to retain their biological self or not. I think they'll probably choose to retain their biological self. Yes, it will enable anyone who wants to have superhuman cognition. Anyone who wants. This is not a matter of earning power, because your earning power would be vastly greater after you do it. It'll be difficult to really appreciate the difference. It's kind of like, how much smarter are you with a phone or computer than without? You're vastly smarter, actually. You can answer any question. If you connect to the internet, you can answer any question pretty much instantly, any calculation. Your phone's memory is essentially perfect. You can remember flawlessly. Your phone can remember videos, pictures, everything perfectly. Your phone is already an extension of you. You're already a cyborg.
This is the world as it exists today. Welcome to the desert of the real. We have only bits and pieces of information, but what we know for certain is that at some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI? You mean artificial intelligence?
A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines.
Now we have a society in which the new way of entertaining oneself has replaced the old way. The old way was that human beings actually sat together and talked and discussed things. And the new way is that they watch cathode rays flickering out in darkened rooms all over the globe. In fact, this city has millions of people doing just that while you're here listening to somebody actually speak, a human being, not on they'll put it on screen soon enough, right? And this is not simply in England, this is all over the world. This is a global phenomenon. And we have to realize the power that this phenomenon is taking over. But the point being is that this innovation, this constant quest for the new, and this is why in their advertisements they're always saying new and improved, constantly flashing, new and improved. And this is the idea that modern man has, that the old has no value in it. New lamps for old. We'll replace your old lamps with new lamps. Now, unfortunately, the Muslims have traded their old lamp as well. And the old lamp worked. You could get things done with it. But they stopped believing that at a certain point. And they suddenly began to say, we need to innovate. We need to also do what the West has done in order to catch up with them. And most peoples are in such a state of disequilibrium, whether in the West or in the East. There's just a state of disequilibrium everywhere. A state of turmoil and chaos. And it's increasing. And you will see it increase. And this is part of the end time scenario. It is important that they know the signs of the end of time because a number of things happen towards the end of time, and one of them is confusion. People become confused. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that a man will get up in the morning with his intellect and he'll go to bed in a state of bewilderment. A man will wake up in the morning with his intellect and he will go to sleep in a state of bewilderment. يصبح المرء حليما ويمسي حيرانا. In another tradition, the Prophet ﷺ said that من يعيش منكم, whoever lives from amongst you, فسيرى أمورا عظاما, he will see great things, vast things, unbelievable things. يتفاقم شأنها في صدوركم. The matters of those things will be so vast when you look at them. They'll seem so incredible to the people. And then he said to the point, حتى يذكر بعضكم بعضا هل ذكر نبينا شيئا من هذه. Did our Prophet make mention of any of these things? Did our Prophet make mention of any of these things? Did our Prophet make mention of America? Did our Prophet make mention of the television? Did our Prophet make mention of the mass media, of public relations? Did our Prophet make mention of the fact that our cities would be bombed with impunity and the Muslims would sit by and watch it happen? And some of them would watch it happen on the news and then go back to their dinner? We're living in very, very powerful times. And so the importance of knowing the signs is that when you recognize a sign, if you're educated, you know what it means. Because a sign symbolizes something. That's the nature of signs. They symbolize. So for instance, in the Arabic language, you learn that in grammar, you have signs. You have signs of inflection, i'rab. You have signs that are ashkal or vowelings, and you have signs that are letters. And so when you see those signs in the Arabic script, you know what they mean. So the point being is, if you don't know how to read signs, you won't understand anything. And this is part of the age we're living in. If you don't understand the signs, you won't know what it means. And if you don't know what it means, the nature of not knowing the meaning of something is that you become confused. And the nature of confusion is that you lose your stability. And the word in Arabic for stability is thabat. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the end of time, ask for thabat. Al-thabat, al-thabat. Stability on your deen. Of it. And zaman yufassir al-Qur'an, like Ibn Umar said. Time is what interprets the Qur'an. Now we get to where we're at. Signs of the end of time. Ibn Mas'ud said, does the hour have a knowledge that you can know it by? He said, Na'am ya Ibn Mas'ud. And this is a science that our ulama need to reestablish. Jibreel taught 4 things. There's not 3 aspects of Islam. There are 4. People say Islam, Iman, Ihsan. But Hadith Jibreel has alamat as-sa'. And Muslims have to know these signs. So they recognize them when they see them. And there are many signs. One of the signs, يَكُونَ الْوَلَدُ غَيْذًا. Children become filled with rage. وَأَنْ يَكُونَ الْمَطْرُ قَيْذًا. Rain becomes burning or acidic, acid rain. وَأَنْ تَفِيضَ الْأَشْرَارُ فَيْضًا. You'll see evil people spreading widely. يَا ابْنَ مَسْعُودٍ مِنْ عَلَامَ السَّاعَةِ وَأَشْرَاطِهَا أَنْ يُؤْتَمَنَ الْخَائِنِ وَأَنْ يُخَوَّنَ الْأَمِينَ. People will trust treacherous people, and they will consider trustworthy people treacherous. وَأَنْ يُصَدَّقَ الْكَاذِبُ وَأَنْ يُكَذِّبَ الصَّادِقُ. The truthful one will be called a liar, and the one telling a lie will be called truthful. These are signs. يا ابن مسعود إن من علام الساعة وأشراطها أن تواصل الأطباق وأن تقطع الأرحام. This to me is one of the clear prophetic miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. Because I believe that the atbaq, and you know in Algeria, what do they call the dish? Tabaq. They call the satellite dish in North Africa atbaq. And that is a correct ta'rib. In the East they call them suhun or dishat. They call them suhun, and that's an incorrect hadith because a sahan is a flat dish. The tabaq is a concave dish. And so atbaq is the correct meaning. And the Prophet used the very word that's used for satellite communications, muwasalat. He said, tuwasal al-atbaq, that the dishes will be communicating continuously, and people will sever their family ties. In other words, people will stay home and watch television on satellite dish, and they won't go visit their neighbors. This is an amazing hadith to me. يا ابن مسعود من أعلام الساعة وأشراطها أن يسود كل قبيلة منافقوها. You will see hypocrites ruling. وكل سوق فجارها. And you will see the worst people controlling the marketplaces. يا ابن مسعود إن من أعلام الساعة وأشراطها أن تزخرف المحاريب وأن تخرب القلوب. That you will have ornamented mosques, but the hearts would be ugly. They'll be derelict, bereft. So people praying in the mosque, they've done no tazkiyah, but the mosque is beautiful. يا ابن مسعود إن من علام الساعة وأشراطها أن يكون المؤمن في القبيلة أذل من النقد. The mu'min will be more humiliated than the ugly goat. Like nothing. يا ابن مسعود إن من علام الساعة وأشراطها أن يكتفي الرجال بالرجال والنساء بالنساء. You will see homosexuality and lesbianism widespread. Wake up, people. This is our Prophet speaking. And he said, you will see Mirk al-Subyan, young people having massive wealth. Like Zuckerberg is a multi-billionaire before he was 30. And you will see mu'amaratun nisa. You'll see these movements to corrupt the women. يا ابن مسعود إن من أشراط الساعة وأعلامها أن يعمر خراب الدنيا ويخرب عمرانها or عمرانها. You will see the destruction of civilization. You will see the civilization of the destruction of the world. So, kharabu dunya, that will become the ta'mir. It's tadmir. People will, like blowing up mosques. This is the khilafah. The Abbasids built those mosques, and now the new khilafah, quote unquote, is blowing them up. So you're seeing the Umran of Kharab. This is their civilization. This is what they have to offer. And you will see the destruction of real civilization. يا ابن مسعود إن من علام الساعة وأشراطها أن تظهر المعازف. That musical instruments will be widespread, and alcohol and drums. يا ابن مسعود إن من علام الساعة وأشراطها. He said that من أشارة الشرط, you'll see many police, and also al-ghammazun, al-lammazun, people mocking and making fun. Now look at all the TV shows where they just mock people. يا ابن مسعود إن من علام الساعة وأشراطها أن يكثر أولاد الزنا. You will see many children born out of wedlock. In my country now, over 50%. Amazing. تعرض الفتن على القلوب كالحصير. Now I want to interpret this hadith. Hasir is a mattress, or a mat. It's a matrix. It's like this. it has vertical and horizontal, and it's a mat. And the Prophet said that the fitan will be shown to the hearts like a mat. Udan udan. The oud is like one of the, it has two lines, a horizontal and vertical line. Any heart that drinks it will become white. I already did that. But if you look now, this is the TV set. You see, it's a hasir. This is the set. It's a hasir. It's a mat. And the Prophet said, the fitan will be shown to the hearts like a mat. Kal hasir. Udan udan. You see, they have a ud. These are called idan. Any Arab would call that idan. And this is what the Prophet's like. I believe, this is my interpretation, but the al-lugha tahtamiluha. The Arabic language bears this meaning, and that's why I believe it's a valid interpretation. This is the oud, the idan of the television. And this is how shaitan is destroying the hearts, by showing them the fitan on these films and on TV over and over again until people just become accustomed to violence. It's a normal thing. They're not shocked by it anymore. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم صنفان من أهل النار لم أرهما قوم معهم سياط كأذناب البقر. You will see people with whips like cow tails. يضربون بها الناس. They'll hit people with it. ونساء كاسيات عاريات. Women that were clothed and naked at the same time. مائلات. They'll sway in their walk. مميلات. And cause others to incline towards them. رؤوسهن كأسنمة البخت. Ya Allah, Sadaqa Rasulullah. He said their hair would be like the Bactrian camel's hair. This is not a camel the Arabs had. They came from Persia, so they saw them. They knew what they were. These people will not enter paradise. And here's the Bactrian camel. Wallahi, say Sadaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. He said people will drink intoxicants from my ummah and call it by other names. Right? They'll have lots of names for it. يُعْزَفُ عَلَى رُؤُسِهِمْ بِالْمَعَازِفِ. Musical instruments will be on their heads. How did he know about that? That's what it says. I didn't make that up. It says they'll have ma'azif, عَلَى رُؤُسِهِمْ مَعَازِف. On their heads are musical instruments. Who would have thought that? Who would have known what that meant at the time of our Prophet ﷺ? But now we see it, all these people everywhere. And here's the iPod. It's not I am a pod. A pod is you have invasion of the body snatchers. They take over your body. A pod takes over your body. They took out the verb to be. They just say iPod. Because you're not being anymore. You're a shadow of your former self. Your mind is filled with their thoughts. You're not even yourself anymore. You're listening to Rihanna or Madonna or Haifa Wahbi or whoever the latest fashionable singer is. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.